Hi. Hello.
Hiya, how are you?
I'm good. How
Good.
are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's summer here in London, so the weather is getting quite warm, so pretty happy.
I can see that behind you. It's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, my banana plant, right? It reminds me of Singapore a lot. Yeah,
It's a little Singapore with you. Okay.
yeah, definitely.
So here we are today in our very first episode of the Picture Book Matters podcast. So whoever is listening or seeing us, welcome to the Picture Book Matters podcast. This is our very first episode. And those of you who don't know us, we are the co founders of the Picture Book Matters. I am Eva Smita. I am a children's book illustrator and a graphic novelist. And I'm with Eva. Eva is an author and an editor. And as I said, we are the co founders of the Picture Book Matters. And Picture Book Matters is a platform through which we conduct workshops and masterclasses for emerging children's book authors and illustrators. So
That's
here we
right.
are doing our first episode of a podcast. And Eva, why are we
Mhm.
doing a podcast?
Okay, so the podcast idea came about after one conversation Smita and I had. So we talk because now I'm based in London, Smita's still based in Singapore, and so we have our meetings on Zoom. And our meetings go on, and we chat about a lot of things, and then we thought, why not make what we are chatting about into a podcast, because we do chat a lot about the industry, about creating picture books, about writing and illustrating. I mean, I don't illustrate, but Smita does both talent there. I am learning. I want to learn how to illustrate, but picture books and or just illustrate really. I do the writing, and so Smita and I have partnered in quite a few projects, and so we understand each other's processes, and so that's how Picture Book Matters was actually founded, right?
Yeah, in fact, you know what? This is the month of June when we started Picture Book Matters about 3 years ago.
3 years. Oh my goodness. So we're goodness, right? Yeah. I mean, time has just gone by so quickly since we started. And we've now we have how many followers on our Facebook? I mean, we have an alumni group
We do.
that, yeah.
And I mean,
So
more than the followers or the people who we have on Instagram or Facebook, I think it's also about the community which has been constantly
yes.
growing, and the need. Like even today, when we conduct workshops, we're almost like every month we have something or the other. And
Yes.
sometimes I know, like you and I also, and I in particular, I procrastinate a lot, and then we don't do certain things. uh, but yeah, then the community starts to tell us that, oh hey, we need another workshop, and that's when we end up doing one more.
Exactly. I mean, I guess it's we're dedicated to what we do, but both of us we have such busy lives, don't we? I mean, I have a family, you have a family, we have jobs in between, and I freelance as an editor, I read manuscripts, I also write, and you illustrate, and you're on a big project at the moment. So and then in between all this, there's Picture Book Matters, and each time that we do a workshop, for example, you and I, we talked about how psyched we are and how excited and how much we also love, sharing what we know. And we also learn, from our participants. So like learning and teaching is a cyclical process, isn't it? It one feeds the other, I guess. So I guess again, why this podcast? I suppose that's part of the learning. We're learning to do podcasts, I guess. And then we're kind of learning to teach in different ways, I think.
I'm
Yeah.
not even sure whether we are actually trying to teach anything through this podcast.
Hmm.
More about sharing, and
More about sharing.
we
Yeah.
do the workshops and master classes to teach. I mean, that's actually
True.
where we play the role of an educator. But those workshops, I feel that there's a particular theme, and also it's time bound. So there's not always enough time to share personal anecdotes. And there are many like direct as well as indirect impacts that, that we see in the entire picture book making process. And you and I, even though we have collaborated many times, but we also have, like, as an author, you have a different process and I have a different approach, when we are creating probably even the same book. We will still have different approaches and different experiences. And
Right.
those are the little personal anecdotes that we wanted to share through this podcast, and hopefully whoever is listening or seeing us will get some benefits out of it.
Yeah, exactly the anecdotes. And the anecdotes are like stories, and they, like I mean, it is a story and anecdote. So so when you are such a great storyteller, and so when we talk, it's always this one story coming out after another, and then it just kind of leads on into a full-blown conversation, and then we are somewhere else,
Yes.
isn't it? So yeah, you're right. It's not so much about teaching, it's really about sharing, like what we know and our processes, and that, in a way, help start more conversations, about picture book making.
Yes, yes. And a lot of times I've also felt, and I'm sure you must have also experienced this, that when we talk about a certain field, and we try to create some boundaries, some walls around it. And I always feel like creative fields are not like that. They're the boundaries, the borders are always blurred, right? You can't really, I mean, there are so many times, we create books which are influenced by cinema or, photography,
Yeah.
and, so many other, or dance performances or songs. So there are those overlaps, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I don't always necessarily listen to illustration related podcasts. I mean,
Yeah.
I do listen to them as well, but you just get ideas or inspirations from so many different places, just by, listening to people and when they share their experiences, whether it's positive or negative. And suddenly, an idea comes to you from there. So that's the beauty of, I guess, with podcasts.
No, definitely. I think what you're touching on is the subliminal or the unconscious processes in creative work. And, every creator or every creative knows, whether they're filmmakers, photographer, artists, illustrators, writers, we all know that one thing feeds into another thing. I mean, like for me, when I'm kind of down on ideas or low on inspiration, my fix is to go watch a movie. That is for me. Or I will flip through some art books, because I work a lot with images, and as we know, right, picture book writing is about working with images. Even if you're a writer, you have to write with an image. How does your character like look or does something, so even though that image may not be translated by the illustrator, but as a writer, you want to keep your story active. So I think, and I work a lot with images. So I think my go-to is when I'm low on inspiration, or I feel like I pick me up, I just watch a movie. So you're right, so everything is subliminal, and I think it's unconscious, really, how we create, where the story comes from.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think in the future, when we continue doing this podcast, which I feel like we will be, because this is our passion project. We're not getting any money from this, but we still want to do it because you and I both believe in community building and entire ecosystem. I think both of us have mentioned in different platforms about this whole idea of an ecosystem that needs to be there and that has to be properly nurtured, so that authors, illustrators, publishers, editors, art directors, agents, everybody can support each other. I mean, this whole idea of having a competitive world is so much not required. I mean, we could all coexist in a healthy ecosystem. So we
definitely
want that. And that's why I think this is our passion project, and we'll continue doing it, and we'll continue sharing what we feel.
Yeah, definitely. I always think that competition kills creativity, because if you create from a space of, oh, I want to compete against someone. There's nothing wrong with competition, because competition exists for a reason, right? It helps us be better and progress and what have you. But then if you create from that space, it actually is, for me, very limiting. There is plenty of space for everyone to play in, right? And I've always said that. So if there is any sort of competition, I compete against myself. I want to be better than, I want my next story to be better than the story before.
Yes.
Right? Because, as a writer, we all understand that writing is a craft, that it can be learned and definitely can be improved on.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so true that it's not, you've said it very beautifully, that it's not, and I don't even think it's just about competing with yourself. It's like you said, that it's just about getting better, and that interest, that don't think that you have done the best, because once you have done it, once you have reached the level of perfection, then you are dead.
No, truly.
There's no room for growth, no room for development. So better let us stay alive and keep doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep that passion alive, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. By the way, do you listen to podcasts?
Very rarely. I do listen to Audible books though. I'm terrible with podcasts, and I think for me it's more the time. It's something, and I mean, I know my daughter listens to podcasts a lot, and she talks to me a lot about her podcast. She's a master's student studying biology. And she listens to all these podcasts on health and pathology, which is so interesting. And I've listened with her once or twice, and so interesting because in these podcasts that she listens to, these are doctors or some people in science, and they talk, and they also share anecdotes about the industry that they're working in and stuff. So I am, I said to Smita, and I said to you that I will really make it a point to to prioritize podcasts next, next to movies, next to a moving image.
About the process, right? Because you're an author, you're mostly writing, and I'm not sure if you could listen to some, because there are some people who could listen and then also write, because they can make that disconnect. But I don't know, like if I'm writing something, I rather not listen to anything, because there's so much going inside my head. But I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm drawing, when I'm illustrating, because I want
so cool.
See something, so my ears are constantly busy listening,
right
and gathering information. So that's why I end up listening to a lot of podcasts.
That's great. Like, I mean, I cannot multitask like that. So if I'm writing, like you said, right, I can have music in the background, but anyone else talking would distract me so much. So therefore no podcasts, but I can have music or because my character's already making so much noise in my head.
I know. And this is a very crazy thing to say, right? And people like that's why you and I, when we talk, we can totally relate to these things. It comes naturally to us. But I remember I was talking to somebody very recently, and I told the person, and he was very interested in coming and visiting the space where
right.
And I was like, better don't come when I'm creating, because it's so busy. And he was, why is it so busy? And I'm like, oh, all my characters are like, around me. They're talking to me. Sometimes they're crying, they're screaming, they're laughing. And I'm so, and I'm sure after that, he didn't speak to me for a while. So what kind of impression I created on him.
But it's so true though, because to make characters relatable to our readers or our viewers in terms of illustrations, they have to be real to us as creators of these characters, even as they're fictional, right? They have to be real people. So, like dialogue features a lot in my writing. And I hear my character's voice and, not just voice in the story or how they speak in the story, but the voice of them leading me through the story.
Mm.
Like say for Owen, I know I keep talking about Owen, and he's really my favorite character. The boy who talks in bits and bobs. He was really a character that came to me in my dream and just filled my dream space. And he has no voice, but he actually has a big voice. Not that he doesn't have a voice. I mean, not that there's no voice. There is a voice. He's just discovering his voice.
Yeah.
Right. So in my dreams, he keeps coming, and he has been coming before we created Owen together. He was in my dream for many, many years. So it sounds a bit crazy, but he was just leading this, and the story came as soon as I realized what he needed.
Yes.
I knew what he wanted. So, I mean, I think as writers, we know that we have a character, the character wants something, there's something that impedes his wants, but then we forget to ask ourselves, what does the character need? A need is so very different from a want,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think when I settled on what Owen needed, the story just flowed. And it was as if he was telling me, it sounds, again, I said it sounds a bit crazy, but that's how it is.
Yes. Yeah. And for those of us, the people who are listening to us, if they don't know who is Owen, who we are talking about, Owen is the character from The Boy Who Talks in Bits and Bobs. And that's the first picture book that you and I created together. So, yeah. And so Owen is a very special character for the two of us because
definitely
co-created by the two of us. And so in fact, now I just want to bring back our conversation to this, initial question of why this podcast. And I just feel that a lot of things that we touched upon today, even in this conversation, like we talked about voices, we talked about creative processes, we talked about the different impact that is created, or the basics of picture book making or publishing industry experiences, sometimes good, sometimes bad. All these things can be actually, we could go deeper into all of and share in details with our viewers, and tell them every time about what our personal experiences have been. And through that, if people get inspired, or if they get benefited with the information that we share, I think that will be really good, and that will be a positive side effect of this podcast.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think you and I, and that's why we work so well together, that we really have very similar values, in terms of sharing, in terms of building a supportive community, and wanting to grow that ecosystem, especially in Southeast Asia, where we are from, and or Asia, where we're from, right? Really need that support network, I feel.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. We have it in, Asia is so huge that every country, and also there are different languages spoken. So it's not just, there are cultural overlaps for sure, but I feel like because of the language differences, each of us, we have different communities, and, each of the countries I'm talking about, and even within the countries, there are communities about regional languages and all that. So there is not really, or I'm not even sure if we really have the need for one consolidated body, but more bodies better,
No, definitely. Then there's diversity, and more conversations, and the communities talking to each other.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we have a good start.
We do. And, I'm really looking forward to our next meeting for this. We'll come up with another thing to talk about.
Exactly. So we will be back very soon, and we will be sharing our podcast links on the YouTube page and Facebook, as well as on our Instagram page. We'll just let you know about the links, and you can always watch us, hear us, share your comments, share your ideas. If you want to listen to a particular theme, if you want to suggest a topic, please go ahead And if you listen to podcasts, let us know what are the kind of podcasts you are listening, which are, inspiring you. And we would love to hear all those things. Okay.
Definitely. Okay, guys. See you next week.
Signing off.
Signing off. Bye bye.
Bye.